Hi there. Are you someone who is feeling exhausted? Maybe you have been retreating to your couch more than usual with what I like to call the big three: Netflix, chocolate, and wine. Maybe you're even sighing a lot and feeling just tired and overwhelmed a lot of the time. If this sounds familiar, listen up because this blog's for you. So let me ask you a question. When was the last time you felt full of energy, like for a consistent period of time? I'll go first. So I can't recall a single time in my life where I have ever experienced reliable, consistent, dependable, on-demand energy, except for when I walk into a room and flip on a light switch. Haha. I tend to experience bursts of energy that keep me going for a while, like a day, maybe even two, maybe even an entire week. But inevitably, it always comes to the same conclusion, which is me face planting onto my couch where I may need an equal amount of time to recover from feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm. Even going back to my adolescence and my early 20s, I can remember complaining about feeling tired a lot of the time. Every time I complained about feeling fatigued, however, I would often hear unhelpful responses like, "You're so young. Why are you so tired all the time?" Or, "You should be full of energy at your age. What's your problem?" Or my personal favorite and the ever so helpful, "You really just need to get your shit together." Do any of these sound familiar? So, to make a long story short and to bring you up to the present day, these persistent feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm continued throughout the entire course of my adult life. And I attributed it largely over the years to just essentially life and a lot of external stressors that come with living life. In addition to everything, though, that was going on in my external world, my internal world wasn't looking so hot either. I was striving to be as perfect and pleasing as possible across every domain of my life. I was overcompensating and overgiving in spite of already feeling tired a lot of the time. And essentially, I was overcommitting to things and stressing myself out, and essentially, what I like to say, pickling myself in adrenaline and cortisol. And then it's also important to not forget about the intense guilt trips that I would take myself on whenever I dropped a ball, which was frequently, or when I sensed someone around me wasn't happy and that somehow it was my fault because I wasn't doing enough for them, or I wasn't fixing a problem that they had because I was such a people pleaser. And so, with all of this over the years, I went through multiple bouts of burnout of varying degrees, and still my ADHD went undetected. I now suspect that this was largely due to my high capacity for masking my symptoms, for having, a high level of cognitive functioning, and for my compensatory strategies that I developed over the years. But as I got older, cue the hormones, all of those coping and masking strategies began to fail me. And I ended up crashing into a very severe case of burnout, riddled with PTSD-like symptoms. In the present day, I talk openly about how this experience with burnout completely transformed my life. And it did, because it marked a massive and still ongoing healing journey that led me to leave a 20-year career in mental health that was crushing my soul, and into creating a coaching practice that I absolutely love. And yes, in the end, I am grateful for this experience, but this is not where my story with burnout ends. As a life coach specializing in burnout management for heart-centered and high-achieving women like us, I created this wonderful, evidence-informed, and now proven coaching system, which I call my 5 vital steps to transform stress into greater energy, focus, and happiness. And I personally pioneered it with great results. And since that time, over the last 4 years, the women that I have had the honor of coaching have also achieved their desired results. And I was and still am incredibly proud, joyous, and excited about the transformational community that we are all building together. But behind the scenes of all of this, I was continuing to experience lengthy bouts of exhaustion, struggles with inconsistency in my business, and an inability to get off the couch some days, sometimes days stretching into weeks, in spite of having a strong will and the motivation to do so. If you can relate to this, I would love for you to send me a message and share your story with me. I would love to hear from you. So it was about the end of January 2022 when I experienced what some of my more esoteric friends, as I like to call them, would name a dark night of the soul that lasted 3 very long and very dreary months. It was a period of time where I retreated once again to my couch, confused and bewildered, while trying to make sense of my inner reality as well as my external reality, as I became transfixed on watching the news, which is something I rarely do. And I became hyper focused on the shocking things that were happening, not just in our country here in Canada, but also around the world. And my family watched helplessly from the sidelines, challenging me to do something like practice what I preach in my 5 vital steps so that I could get back to being me. But somehow, intuitively, I knew that there was something deeper going on within me, and that whatever was going on within me, I felt like I was right where I was supposed to be at that time. It felt like I was searching for something, and at times also like I was grieving. I knew it wasn't depression, but it was definitely a lot of disempowering emotions that I was sitting with. And I really just let myself sit in the discomfort of those disempowering emotions that I was experiencing. I sat with sadness, with anger, with frustration, with more anger at times, with more sadness, some outrage creeped in from time to time. And then would come this cycle of guilt and shame. And of course, during this time, my inner critic was just going wild, reiterating every limiting belief that I have ever had about myself. Beliefs I thought I'd cleared or worked my way through, like you're lazy, you're an imposter, you're a procrastinator, you're sabotaging yourself, you're a hypocrite, and it really was not pretty. So I reached out to my hypnosis community for support and was guided through some powerful hypnosis sessions to release those emotions that were becoming trapped and had been trapped in my body for a really long time. And I was able to let go of some of those limiting beliefs. Thank you, Hypno Heather. And then I also did a really powerful past life regression. Thank you, Corey Gordon, that expanded my connection to my heart and to my higher self, put me in touch with my higher self, and expanded my ability to accept all of those parts of me, even the dark parts, even the parts that made me really uncomfortable. And in truth, these were the parts that I had been neglecting and avoiding my entire life. Well, some of them anyway. And so during this time of turning inward, I found myself getting really curious about what those thoughts and emotions were here to show me. And they led me to understand that I still had more work to do, of course, on healing my relationship with myself, because this is ongoing work. And so with that realization, I knew it was time for me to go into action and get up off the couch. And so what did I do to break free from this trance I was in, you may be wondering? I hired a Tantra coach and headed to Mexico. Just checking to see if you were still awake there. But seriously, that is what I did. I started out by researching self-love and acceptance practices, and I was looking for something outside of the practices that I was already familiar with. And as the universe and all of its wisdom guided me to the perfect coach for me, which was Dominique DeVita of Yes Tantra, who introduced me to the healing practices of Pink Tantra and showed me how to open my heart chakra, increase my capacity to love and accept myself, as well as how to reconnect and become aware of my body, its feelings and sensations, and its infinite wisdom. And ultimately, that was a big missing link for me. For someone who has spent her entire life living inside her head, this awakened me to a part of myself that I had been neglecting for way too long. How many of you out there can relate to living inside your head and just being disconnected from the neck down? Yeah. So it was Dominique, though, who gently questioned whether or not I thought I might have ADHD. And as a result of this, I pursued my diagnosis and I gained an incredible amount of insight into who I am, the mysteries of me, and how I experience the world. It's like the fog was lifted. A lot of mysteries were solved around why I say, do, think, feel the things I do, and, why I would gravitate toward my couch from time to time. And then I went off to visit my mother in Mexico, where I met a shaman named Anthony, but that's a story for another time. So now that I have this deeper understanding of the root cause of my roller coaster ride with burnout and my need to cling intensely to my couch from time to time, I recognize that my ADHD is going to continue to throw me curveballs, and that's going to keep me humble on this journey to accepting and loving all of the parts that make me uniquely me. And through all of this, I discovered that there are some very unique risk factors that those of us with ADHD may be particularly prone to. And I do talk about these things in my Burn Bright Not Out and Break Up with People Pleasing workshops, but I wanted to share some of these factors with you in this video blog. So the first is persistent exhaustion. So if you're constantly feeling tired and exhausted, that's a risk factor. Feeling the need to avoid people, even the ones you like from time to time, or feeling disconnected from ourselves and from our lives. Engaging in lengthy bouts of rumination, no longer doing things that you love, feeling ineffective at home, at work. Maybe at work you're experiencing presenteeism, you're there but you're not really there, or absenteeism, hypervigilance, difficulty regulating emotions, numbing out with vices like the big three, experiencing persistent illness or dis-ease in the body, and of course, couch lock, otherwise known as ADHD paralysis. It's important to note that, many of these factors and symptoms show up for both neurotypical and neurodivergent brains from time to time. But also it is really important to note that ADHD does come with its own set of additional challenges when it comes to the reasons why we are so susceptible to burnout. And so here they are. I am calling them the 3 O's for the sake of, remembering. And the first is overcompensating. So many ADHD women, especially those of us who've gone undiagnosed or who were diagnosed late in life, women like me, grew up under the weight of unmet expectations throughout their entire lives. And without a diagnosis, they never had the awareness that some of the challenges that they were facing were not due to character flaws, but instead were due to the way their brains are wired. Since our brains are wired differently, we often have experienced guilt and shame due to unknowing caregivers, educators, eventually bosses, spouses, loved ones, whether they were well-meaning or not, who pointed out our shortcomings. And so many of us have endured being labeled as lazy, unmotivated, not living up to our potential. If I had $1 for every parent-teacher interview that my mother came home quoting that exact line, Shelley isn't living up to her potential. Or here's another one, disruptive, Shelley was disruptive in class, or being unfocused, careless, spacey, flaky, or maybe even unintelligent. And these false beliefs have led many of us into compensating behaviors like excessive people-pleasing, perfectionism, overachieving, and relentless masking of our ADHD symptoms, all in an effort to be seen as neurotypical and to be accepted by the people around us. These masking behaviors require a Herculean effort and over time become exhausting and a very real source of ongoing fatigue for women with ADHD. So if you are feeling persistently exhausted, it's not all in your head. The second is overcommitting. People with ADHD tend to have problems sequencing, organizing, and initiating our tasks. And added to these challenges, we may also have a magical sense of time, as described by Dr. Gabor Mate in his now best-selling book, Scattered Minds. And this is a problem with the perception of time and means that we have difficulty assessing how much time has passed and then also how much time is required to do a task, which makes it very easy for us to overcommit by accident and take on way too many things at once. Then toss in the strong urge to please others and to be accepted and avoid rejection due to that early childhood conditioning that I was talking about, as well as something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which could be a blog all on its own. And we have this real recipe for overwhelm and burnout. Permeable boundaries, difficulty saying no, result in us accumulating more and more responsibilities, which become unmanageable and can lead us into the dreaded couch lock, or what is also known as ADHD freeze or ADHD paralysis, which then leads us to the next unique experience, which I have called over-guilting, the third O. So, okay, yes, this is my very own moniker because I thought it would be very clever and catchy to have three things starting with the word over. But stay with me here because this really is a valid contributor to burnout in some women with ADHD. Certainly has been for me. So many ADHD women have an overactive inner critic, that little voice in your head, that talks to you from time to time. And if you're thinking you don't have one, that's the voice right there. And this voice will guilt trip us for just about anything and everything, but especially for resting. And this is mainly due to the fact that many of us have been called lazy and being accused of underachieving for our entire lives. And so the idea of slowing down and resting feels selfish and counterintuitive. Therefore, we may have a need to constantly be doing something or moving about in some way, whether or not we have the hyperactivity component, or like me, it's an inattentive type or a combination of the two. And then add to this our struggles with task initiation and the fear of not being able to get started again. Should we stop? That can also keep propelling us forward. Even when we have exhausted all of our inner resources, physically, mentally, and emotionally, this can still happen. Been there and done that. And maybe you have too. And so guess what happens when we reach this stage of exhaustion? Hello, couch. And guess what many of us do while we're clinging to our couch? That's right. We continue the cycle of guilting and shaming ourselves. So right about now, you may be thinking, well, this is a lot, and what can I do about all of this? So I want to share a few suggestions from my 5 vital steps that you may find helpful, because I certainly have. So the first is to begin to engage consistently in mindfulness practices that teach self-compassion. Tara Brock and Kristen Neff have some excellent resources on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram to get you started. Another is to start practicing saying no and to follow through on your no. Easier said than done, you may say. Send me an email and ask me for my Just Say No mini workbook, and I'll send it right to your inbox and it will get you started. It has some really easy lines you can use to ease into the practice of saying no. Another is to overestimate the amount of time that it's going to take for you to do something and then double it and then plan accordingly. And also set lots and lots of reminders and alarms on your phone. The next is taking time for rest. So sleep, nap, daydream, visualize, practice breathing, meditation, or self-hypnosis to soothe your central nervous system. And finally, ask for and accept help when you need it from family, friends, and coworkers. We try to do a lot of things on our own, and we're afraid to ask for help. Asking for help can be a real relief. And then also start to tune into the feelings and sensations within your body and what they are communicating to you, and also what those emotions are communicating to you as well. Work with a therapist or a coach, tap into your strengths, learn how to quiet your inner critic and let go of those faulty beliefs that you've been hanging on to since early childhood that are keeping you stuck in patterns that are contributing to your stress and overwhelm. And that's what I do. That's what I do best. So if you would like to get to know me and connect with other powerful, heart-centered women in my community who are on their own transformational journeys to greater energy, self-love, and happiness, then I invite you to come and follow me, if you aren't already, on Facebook and Instagram at Shelley W. Coach, where I share more mindset and embodiment practices based on my 5 vital steps. And as well, feel free to reach out to me by email anytime. And I would love to hear from you and share your story of your own, struggles with your energy and happiness and so on. So until next time, I wish you love, strength, and vitality, and I hope to see you again soon.